Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Scary Stories by the Campfire. We're your counselors this evening, Jason,
And Jeremy.
and tonight we are having some technical issues with our streaming. So it seems like we have come to the conclusion that we're probably going to have to do this um, recorded wise, and then you guys are just going to have to listen to it later. So we apologize for any inconveniences. Silent Hill has been messing with us all week. This is um this is very disheartening because this is an episode that I am really excited for, and I do not technically get to share this live with you guys. So, all right, well, let's jump into it. Jeremy, what do you think of the movie?
Um, I liked it. It got kind of confusing as to what was going on towards the end of what exactly was happening, but um, other than that, I thought it was great. Uh, Besides, like I said, just some confusing story stuff at the end of the movie. Couldn't really tell. Like, I know it's a whole witch thing, and everybody's different based upon who's there and all that, but it to me it kind of got a little too confusing.
Okay, let me. I was doing my homework a little bit on this one because I was trying to line it up with how this movie compares to the game. I've never played the first game. I've dabbled in Silent Hill 2 and I've dabbled in Silent Hill Origins. Those are the only two that I've really played. Now, the witch thing is entirely made up, just specifically for this movie. There's no witches in the original Silent Hill. Now, for the movie, they used a female for their main character. Now, in the game, it was Harry Mason.
Mm-hmm.
And essentially, it was kind of the same beginning. He, in this movie, the parallel works like this. In this movie, their kid, Sharon, is wigging out. Okay, she's screaming Silent Hill. I guess they adopted her from Silent Hill. And so the mother, Rose De Silva,
Mm-hmm.
wants to take her back to Silent Hill. Well, she runs off with the girl to take her to Silent Hill, and then there's the issue with the cop, Sybil, and they all end up in Silent Hill.
Oh, okay.
That's huh?
I said, oh, okay.
Okay, so the beginning of the game kind of works the same way, except Harry is a single father. His wife had just died. He's fallen into this depression, and he has this young girl. Um, what? I don't think her name was. I think Cheryl. Sharon was the one from the movie. Cheryl was the girl from the game.
Okay.
So he ends up in a Jeep accident, just like Rose does in the movie. And I guess I can get rid of my chat because we're not going to have a chat channel. So there's so many things. Okay, so both of them end up in a motor or in a vehicle accident, which is ironic because both of them drove Jeeps.
Hmm.
Harry
That's
drove
interesting.
like a Jeep Wrangler, while um, Rose drove a Jeep Liberty. I think is what the thing was. I'm not entirely sure. I just know it was a
Yeah.
Jeep. And Harry never met Sybil before. He just saw her crash motorcycle on the road when he passed by. The same instance does happen where they both see that apparition in the road. They both skid and crash. And both wake up with their kids missing.
So that
So
part's all
that's
accurate.
what was that?
That part is accurate.
Yeah, I mean there was some added stuff with like Sharon being tied to the town somehow, and her mysteriously having this kind of what they thought was some sort of illness where she's just freaking out about Silent Hill, while Cheryl was just wanting Daddy to go to Silent Hill because it's a resort town. Um, and that's the other big difference in the movie. Silent Hill is based in Pennsylvania, where they have this um, coal fire burning underground. It's been burning for years. And
Centralia, Pennsylvania.
yep, yep, it is actually based off of a real town that does have a coal mine on fire.
Mm-hmm.
You're gonna love this one, Jeremy. You're gonna love this one. Silent Hill in the games. Where was it located at?
Wasn't it West Virginia?
Nope. It was Maine.
We were back to Maine.
We can't get out of Maine.
We can't get out of Derry.
Came out of Derry.
We went from Derry, Maine to Silent Hill, Maine.
Silent Hill, Maine. So, in the movie, the fog was actually the ash from the fires that were burning underneath. Technically. Because in the movie, they have technically 3 different worlds. I don't know exactly how it works in the game because it never really explains it. They're like just it's in the game it feels like they have 2 worlds. They have the Silent Hill fog world, the whatever world that would be, whatever they call that. And then they have the other world, which is the one with the rusted chains and fencing and broken streets and all that nastiness.
Yeah, where it changes and how it looks like the painting is just going up the wall.
Yeah. And actually, I think that effect was made, I think, specifically for the movie because in the game, because I was watching a playthrough actually, in the game, it's a survival horror game, so it plays a lot like if anyone out there's played like Resident Evil. It's got those really awkward tank controls. But when you're playing the game, the angles you got like locked camera angles in certain hallways and alleyways. So as the first time that it changes, which ironically is the same in the movie, where she goes down an alleyway and she goes down into this area, and then she hears the air raid siren or whatever, and then the world changes around Rose.
Yes.
And it does the paint effect where the bricks and stuff start melting up, or no, actually they start dripping down and they start falling apart, and she turns into this. It turns into this like nasty, rusty boiler, industrial looking thing, and she runs into her first set of monsters there, and that's exactly how it happened to Harry. He ended up following what he thought was his daughter down an alleyway, and he ended up in the same area with these things, these little creepy monsters. Now, in the game, these things are called my God, they're called gray children.
Okay.
That's what they're called. I think they function the same way. Now, in the game, they carry knives. In this one, they didn't. They just kind of screamed at her. Here's the thing about Silent Hill that I really do like about Silent Hill, which I'm going to be honest with everyone out there. Silent Hill and I have a love-hate relationship. And And I say that because the earlier stuff is really, really good, but when you start getting into the later stuff, especially after like the American companies got a hold of it, after like I think it was Team Silent um, left the project and whatnot, and it just came became not really. It became like a later stage Resident Evil game. Remember, like when Resident Evil was like survival horror,
Oh
and then you
yeah,
had like Resident Evil 5, where you just run around, and just punch things, and not even worry about stuff.
yeah, because 4 was what kind of changed the tune on what would they're going from survival horror to action horror.
Yeah, so it kind of happens the same way with Silent Hill later on. But in the games, the monsters that appear in the games, they're all based on the people involved. Now, the main monsters from the first game were these pterodactyl monsters. I think they're called like air screamers,
Yeah, okay.
which had something to do with Alessa. Her favorite book that she remembers had dinosaurs in it. So it's like a manifestation of her favorite dinosaur, the pteranodon or whatever, even though it was more human and fleshy in the game. There were dogs, like skinless dogs, which I guess she was afraid of dogs in the game. She didn't like dogs at all. In in the game, the gray children are representation of the kids at her school because apparently they bullied her and whatnot. She hated them. She hated them because they bullied her, and so this was a manifestation of them, which is very similar, I believe, at least in this aspect, to the ones in the movie, because she was bullied a lot.
Yeah.
Um, and actually, in the game, you can't defeat them on the first go through because you don't have a weapon. They just kind of knife you to death, and then you wake up. You wake up in a diner, and that's where you meet Sybil for the first time. And I think in the movie, she passes out and she crawls into a bowling alley, and then the world changes again, and the little monsters disappear. So, did she meet Sybil after that, Jeremy? Do you remember? I think she
So,
met Sybil after the first change.
Sybil's a cop, right?
Yeah, Sybil was the cop.
Yes, it was after the first change.
So it was after the first change. She
Because she
runs
was
into
running
Sybil.
back to her car.
Yep, that's right. She was running back to her car, and Sybil tries to arrest her, and
Yep.
they come across the second monster, which in this movie is called the Armless Man. In the game, especially the first game, this thing didn't exist. This thing didn't come around until part or Silent Hill 2, which he was called the Lying Man. But Harry wakes up in the diner, and that's where he meets Sybil, and she gives him a gun and tells him that she's going to go try to find his kid, right? Or no, she was going to go for backup, and he was going to go for his kid. Now, of course, with the game, there's a lot of puzzles. So you end up wandering around Silent Hill for a long time, getting keys and unlocking doors and your typical survival horror stuff.
Yeah.
This one, she finds out that her kid's at the school, and that's where she goes. She goes straight to the school, which later on in the game, Harry does make his way to the school. This is where things start to deviate, and sometimes I don't think it's for the best. So let's go down the path of the movie since that's what we're talking about, and then I'll brush up on the game. So she went to the school, right?
Yes.
And where did she go after that? She did the school thing. That's where
I think you thought
her
next
and
one was the church. And
no,
then,
no, it was the hotel, because that's where they met Anna, that part of that cultist. Because
oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Then they went to the church. Then they went to the hospital.
yeah, so that was kind of the order they went. They went from the school, which is where she met Sybil again. and Pyramid Head, which is a problem, but we'll get to that. Um, then they find out they find a note that says that they need to go to this hotel because she got it out of that. She got that piece out of that guy's mouth, the one
Yep.
who was chained or the barbed wired up in the bathroom.
Oh yeah.
So she pulled a piece out of his mouth, and it was a piece to a hotel. So they went to the hotel, which is where they ran into Anna, who is part of this cult or this religious group. Burn the witches, they say. And um, so they came across her, and she took them back to the church when the sirens were going off. There was, while they were in the hotel, if I'm remembering it correctly, Jeremy, correct me if I'm wrong, but they went up, they found, um, oh, what was it? It was a note in one of the room key slots,
Yeah.
and it said room 111. They went up there, and it was behind a picture, and apparently that was the room where they did the whole burning of Alyssa.
Well, I think that's where they. Yeah.
That's where they burned her,
Yes.
and that's where the coal fire started. So
Yes.
they had blocked off that room with a picture and didn't want anyone in there. But Anna takes them back to the church because of the sirens going off again and the other world coming, and Anna gets killed by Pyramid Head, which she was kind of a useless character anyway.
True.
So now, huh?
Said true.
Yeah, so now we get to the weirdly religious aspect of this movie. Because apparently, Sharon, Rose's daughter, is the exact copy of Alyssa, which was Dahlia's, which we see a couple times throughout the movie, Dahlia's child, who is the one burned.
Yep.
And apparently, I don't know how, she's still alive. I think. I'm pretty sure she's still alive. They burned her because they thought she was a witch. And
Burn the witch. I remember because I made all the Monty Python jokes.
yes, you did.
She
And-
turned me into a newt.
Into a newt. Then they dunked her or whatever. But they so the church people take and the church or the this church or whatever is led by Christabella.
Yep, played by Alice Krige. Krige, however you pronounce that.
I don't know. I thought she was in something else that I had seen, but she's not. I don't know who she is.
Star Trek, maybe.
Uh,
Sleepwalkers.
eh.
Thor.
Who's she playing? Thor.
She plays.
Did she play the?
She plays Ear in Dark World.
Yeah, I don't know. Okay, never mind. Thought maybe she played Freya, but okay. So, they take her to the hospital where the demon rests, and she gets a hold of Rose's locket and finds out that her child looks exactly like the one that they burned, and accuse her of being a witch because closed-minded people.
She's a witch. She's a witch.
She's
Burn
a
the
witch.
witch.
Your kid looks like the person that we burned, so you must be a witch too. So Sybil ends up sacrificing herself to let Rose go down to the depths of this hospital, where she runs into the nurses, which is a staple of all the Silent Hill games, even though they're all played relatively differently in each game. And then she finds Alessa, and
Sweet
at that
Lord.
point,
I am so
Huh?
sorry to interrupt you, but I did not know that was her.
what?
Sybil, the actress.
Yeah, she's the one from The Walking Dead.
I did not know that.
We were saying it like the entire time throughout the movie.
And
At
it
least when
just-
she was showing up, we're like, it's
it
silent.
just-
It's
it
what's her
just-
face from the Silent
it
Hill. We
just
even made
didn't-
a reference to the governor, and you
It just
you-
didn't click.
What?
It didn't click when I watched it. She doesn't look like her at all.
That's because she's got that short, spiky hair.
Like, at all. I was like, whoa. Anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
So they end up, I guess Alyssa. Okay, so at this point now, there's like 3 forms of Alyssa. Okay, There's older Alessa, who is
Burned like a crispy potato.
she is yes, she's in the hospital bed and she's completely burned, and she's in this like abandoned hospital. So I don't know how she's still alive. But
By her deep
there's
hatred.
apparently so. Then you have
Sharon.
uh, Sharon, who is supposed to be the her birth child.
No, I
I
think it was
think.
like the way they worded it. It was they separated all the good and that was left.
Yeah, because you had Sharon, who is like the good portion of Alessa, and then you had the dark portion of Alessa, which was the other little girl that was running around. And she tells the whole backstory about how this group took Alessa and burned her because they thought she was a witch. And in the ensuing thing, the police officer, there's a whole nother story going on with on top of all this with Rose's husband trying to track her down, which is just about entirely pointless.
Mr.
There's no
Sean
need for it.
Bean.
There's no need for it. This is the only reason he survived this movie is because all that could have been cut.
Yeah, one of
We
the
didn't.
complaints that I've read is that this movie was too long.
I don't. Well, I mean, I've seen it a couple times, and I don't think it's real. At least to me, it didn't feel long. I think it's just some of it does draw out a little bit, but I know like the 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 Sean Bean story arc does nothing. It gives us backstory.
Yeah.
And the cop that keeps messing with him is the guy who was involved, who rescued Alessa, and um, that's how he burned his hands because they had her in like this like little cage thing, and they were burning her, and he opened up the cage to get her out, and that's how he burned his hands. So he was one of the guys involved there who was helping her, and in that thing, that's how the fire started in the coal mine or whatever. Anywho, whole entire subplot there is pointless, except to give us more backstory. But um, Rose decides to help Alessa because, well, she's the victim. So she absorbs the dark Alyssa inside of her, takes her back to the church where they've burned Sybil at this point, and they're getting ready to burn Sharon,
Burn the witch.
which Dahlia was keeping at her place apparently, because the cultists came in there and took the child from Dahlia, and then Dahlia shows up at the church. So Rose shows up, gets the crowd all riled up. She gets stabbed, and the darkness comes out of her, oozes out of her, which apparently the darkness could not get inside the church. I don't know why. Guess there was a barrier at the door. They put salt or something on the door.
They called the
Couldn't-
Winchesters.
They couldn't get inside. So,
It was
but the
like,
darkness was inside.
but he could walk
and
up the steps. He just couldn't go in the door.
well, here's the strange thing. You build up Pyramid Head like he's this big bad, and he's not even in the finale.
I mean, he's barely in the movie at all.
Yeah, he shows up, and the only kill he really gets is
Anna.
Anna, which he she completely skins her. Just, but the darkness gets inside. Alyssa pretty much barb wires everyone to death. I mean, everybody. She mutilates everybody except for Rose, Sharon, and Dahlia. And then after everything is said and done, and at this point, I think Sharon had absorbed like the dark Alyssa. They've combined into the two to make one now. So Rose takes Sharon back home. Only problem is they're still stuck in that secondary world. This is where, like I said, it gets confusing because you have her husband in the real world, you have Rose still stuck in the Silent Hill world, and then the Silent Hill world occasionally transforms into the other world. So now they're in the same building, but they can't interact with each other because they're in two different planes of existence, and that's how the movie ends. Is anyone out there confused yet?
Me,
Jeremy's raising his hands for all you who can't see, which would be everyone in this particular episode.
like, and that's see that was the thing that just kind of mind boggled me. Like I liked the whole it should be adapt. You know, I liked the whole mysterious background to it and it changing and all that. Although I always wondered, is it on a timer? Every 30 minutes we sound the horn. It's changing.
I don't think it was a timer related thing. I think it just happened when it wanted to.
But how did the church know that it was about to change worlds?
The birds. That's why when they were dressed up in those miner suits and they had that canary or that bird or whatever in the cage, when the birds start freaking out, they know it's getting ready to change. Apparently, which is weird because they didn't do that in the game, at least as far as I'm aware.
So, what you're saying is, on rotation, they had some poor sap sitting at the church going, "Where are those birds? Where are the birds? There's the birds. Sound the horn!"
And then they would probably sound the alarm. Yeah. See, a lot of this movie, like I said, I haven't dived too much into the games personally to know exactly what goes on. I do know that the ending of that is how that's how the movie ended. And see, this is where I have the love-hate relationship because on one aspect of it, let's look at another video game movie for a second. Let's talk about let's go with Resident Evil.
Oh God,
Resident Evil
here we
movie,
go.
Okay. Over time, when that movie came out, I hated that movie.
Oh, I
absolutely hated that movie. Why? Because it had nothing to do with the games. They just used like Umbrella, and there's zombies.
There was one liquor.
And yeah, didn't they have like the dogs? Did they have the dogs in there?
I think they.
Oh, there was like maybe 2 of them.
Yeah,
because she found them in the lab, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if that movie's considered horror, we'll probably go through that franchise too. But
it's a lot of movies.
Over time, when that movie first came out, I didn't like that movie at all. Over time, I probably considered that the best Resident Evil movie, which isn't saying a whole lot. But
okay, well, I'm gonna stop you there.
Okay.
It's the best live action adaptation of Resident Evil.
Yeah, I'm talking about just that live action series. I'm not talking about the animated movies.
Because I will say those animated movies are phenomenal.
Well, the animated movies are tied to the games themselves. They're like extensions of the games. The movies are like a solo franchise. So when I'm saying Resident Evil movies, that's what I'm talking about. The ones with Alice. Ugh. So
Superhuman.
When I saw this movie, I was like, I love this movie. I love this movie because it follows the game. They changed some of the characters' names, but the aspect of it was entirely the same. Now that I've gotten a little bit older, and I kind of know my stuff a little bit better, this movie is a bit more of a miss with me. Not like in the grand scheme of like, I don't like it. It's just, it hurts more now than it did then, because then I didn't know a whole lot. I was just like, this movie follows the game and I love it. Resident Evil had nothing to do with the game. If you're going to make a movie based on a game series, you have 2 routes, at least in my opinion. You have 2 routes. Follow the game or don't follow the game.
Well, I think there's a third route. Because yes, you can follow. Yes, those are the 2 routes that you can take. But, and I'm just going to, this is just coming out of another video game movie, but if you look at the newest Uncharted movie, they followed key points of the game, but with their own story. Specific key points, but with a different, they didn't go after anything that they did in the game. They just had the key elements that make Uncharted what it is.
Yeah, I get that. That's
like for example, the brothers growing up in an orphanage and being separated, and that's how Nathan learned his stuff was from his brother, uh, and stuff like that, and how him and Sully met on a heist. Stuff, yeah, they changed the heist, but it's a key point of how they met, and instead of going after one of the three from the games and being able to be critiqued like that, they're doing something completely different.
Yeah, and see, I think that's where they get that right because they do change aspects of it. It's still the main points are being hit, but they just change the aspect of it a little bit. Um, I think Resident Evil, they did their own thing. They had Umbrella, they had a lab, they had zombies, they had biological weapons, but it told its own story. And at that point, I was like, I hate this because it doesn't have Chris, doesn't have Leon, doesn't have Claire, doesn't have Jill, doesn't have Barry, doesn't have Rebecca, doesn't have any of those characters out there. But then as I grow to appreciate it a little more, I'm like, okay, they did something different. They did their own thing. This movie started off promising. And then when I finally found out how the game ended or what the whole logical point of the game was, it made me go, wait, what? Why did you change that? Now you've just wandered off the whole key element. You changed the game's ending and about half the story to fit a narrative about a witch or a cult or something along those lines. Um, let me see here real quick. Let me see. Okay, so apparently, Jeremy, go ahead and tell me what you think of the movie while I try to find this ending real quick, so I can try to make this brief.
Oh, I mean, it's like I said, it just. Unlike you, like I didn't dive into the Silent Hill games. I kind of dabbled with Silent Hill 2 a little bit, but I never sat down and played them. Not like I have Resident Evil. You know, I've played and beat the first one. I've played and beat the second one. I'm playing the third one now. Like I've never really got into the Silent Hill side of it. So when I first watched it, I didn't know what was game and what wasn't. The only thing I did know was the monsters were determined by the person, and Pyramid Head didn't come in until the second game. And that's all I knew. So, you know, when I first watched this movie, I thought it was a decent movie. I mean, it came out in 2006. I was still in high school. You know? So, I haven't watched it in a few years. It's been a while since I've seen it. And so, coming back and rewatching it, you know, with this older mindset, I'm going to be, like I said, I'm going to be harsher on it because it's a video game movie. And in my opinion, video game movies haven't been good for a very long time.
Yeah, video game movie adaptations have had a bad reputation of not being that good, like average, more of like a cash grab. I mean, I do think over the years, more recently, they've gotten better. Ironically, here's the funny thing since we're talking about video game movies. Ironically, the Sonic the Hedgehog games have gotten worse, but he's making a killing in the box office. He's got some good movies going on right now.
I was about to say, I like the two Sonic movies.
Um,
But you see, that was it. Sonic had no story, so they built their own.
no, he's got a story. He's a
Not-
hedgehog going
Not
out
in
there
the
fighting.
not in the original. It's not really a story.
Well, it plays out like every other game, but technically the story is you go from level to level. You're fighting the bad guy who's turning all the little forest animals into robots, and you're releasing them. That's the premise of the game. That's it.
But it's not really.
Games back then were simple, Jeremy.
Look,
Any
bad
complex
video
sto- didn't
bad
need
video
complex
game movie
story arcs.
started with Super Mario Brothers, and you know it.
now they got let's see, yeah, they got a new Mario movie out.
It's
They're coming out.
animated.
It's animated. Looks like it looks good. I mean, I don't know. Everyone keeps talking about like Chris Pratt as Mario, but I don't know. I'll give it a watch. It looks pretty good. I'm gonna have to turn my phone off. This thing keeps going off. I'll mute it.
You're
Mute.
popular over there.
I know. Probably people asking me what's going on with this podcast. Like, why didn't you guys live? I don't know. Okay, I don't know. I was gonna post it on Facebook, but
I wish I could figure it out, but I will guarantee that we will be when we do Silent Hill Revelations next year or next week.
next year. Jeez, it's gonna take you a year to figure out why you can't stream and record anymore.
No, by the time next Wednesday rolls around, I'll have it figured out as to what's going on, and I'll have it fixed, so we're back up and running at full speed.
Full speed, yeah. We'll get to that.
Speaking of full speed, them nurses did not move at full speed. But do you know how they filmed all that?
Did they get like okay? How they do it?
Oh crap! I had it. I just had it. I hate when this happens. Like I have it, and then I'm like, ugh.
Okay.
Oh, here it is.
So, okay, you got it.
Yeah, the strange stumbling movements of the dark nurses when they first come alive, quote unquote, was created by filming them walking backwards and then running the film in reverse.
Yeah, I mean that's a technique. I thought there was.
And
it seems kind of like that.
And there were 165 sets and locations used for this film. It's a lot.
That's a lot. Okay, let me see here. There is something here. Okay, so this is game relevance. This is how the games start to differ. In the game, Harry comes across Dolly in a church, and there's these markings going around. Got tongue tied here. There are markings all around town that he's noticed, and Dahlia says that this thing is called the Mark of Samuel. Samael, Samael. Samael. She says that this mark can't be completed or the darkness would devour the town. Okay, so the game continues on, blah, 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 blah. Towards the end of the game, Harry traps Alyssa. Okay, so right now there's an Alyssa and there's a Cheryl. Okay, he traps Alyssa with this thing that he got from Dahlia earlier, the Floros. Dahlia appears reveal, huh?
The Floros.
Yeah, Floros, Flauros.
Huh?
Isn't that what they call that thing that's like the Saints Row logo?
That's the Fur Elise.
Okay, Fur Elise. Oh, that's a Beethoven song.
Oh.
So, Dahlia appears after Harry traps Alyssa, revealing that she manipulated him into confining her, as he was the only one who would be able to get close to her, and that Alyssa is in fact her daughter. So, that fact remains the same from movie to or game to movie, except the fact that in the movie, which a lot of people had a problem with apparently, was that in the movie, Dahlia was a victim. When in the game, she is the big bad. She is like the Christabella of the game.
Oh, okay.
And she's willing to do this to her own daughter. Not because she's a witch, Jeremy.
She's a witch.
Later on, blah, 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 skip a bunch of this junk. Harry witnesses a flashback of a meeting between Dahlia Kaufman, which is a character who didn't appear in the movie, and two cult doctors discussing Alyssa's hospitalization and the rebirth of God.
Huh.
I'm not Alyssa got burned, so that's why she was in the hospital. I guess they tried to burn her or something also. Ba-ba-ba-ba-da-ba. Both the flashback and Dahlia's words explain that Dahlia sacrificed her daughter, and I'm getting all this from the Wikipedia page, the Silent Hill fandom.com wiki page, so I'm not like just pulling this out of my butt or anything.
Silent Hill. Well, no, I don't think you've played this game fully through.
No, I ironically, you can actually go on YouTube and watch the entire playthrough of the game if you want. I'm also certain that you can get it on the PlayStation 3 store, I think. You can get on like the PlayStation store, I think, so you can play it. Harry soon finds Dahlia and possibly Sybil if he saved her previously, as well as a figure in a wheelchair wrapped in bandages. Cheryl and Alyssa recombined, with Alyssa's astral projection sitting nearby. Both the flashback and Dahlia's words explain that Dahlia sacrificed her daughter to fire 7 years ago in an attempt to nurture and bring about the birth of the god worshipped by a fanatical cult, the Order, of which Dahlia is a priestess, and that the god now resides within Alyssa's womb. In doing so, Alyssa split her soul in half to prevent God from being born. The other half of the soul manifested itself as Cheryl, whom Harry and his wife found as a baby on the road outside of Silent Hill and subsequently adopted.
She's a witch.
Yeah. So this is.
What easy way? So this is all I can imagine. Okay, I ain't even gonna lie. Like the way you worded that, this is all I can imagine them sitting.
I didn't word it. That's the way the page was written.
So I can imagine them sitting at their desk, right? And the writers are there, like, all right, we have this great game, and she does this, and her mom is burning her because they're trying to bring out this god that's in her womb, so she splits her soul. That's too confusing. She's a witch. We're going with that. She's a witch. Bump the rest of it.
See, that is the thing that I do kind of like about the original games, because they were done by Japanese creators. And in these games, specifically these games, and this is how I like to differentiate Silent Hill from Resident Evil. Resident Evil is kind of like jump scare territory. It's very physical scares. Silent Hill is more of a mental scare, like it will get inside your head. And there's a lot of symbolism involved, I think, in like the second game. One of the rooms that James walks into, there's a bunch of moths flying around a lamp. There's one light, it's up in the ceiling. There's one light, and there's a bunch of moths in the room. And on the bed are a bunch of butterflies that are all dead. And in most societies, moths are a representation of death.
Yeah.
While butterflies are a representation of life. So in this particular scene, you got death flying all around while, life is dead to be a sense. But in this game, and I don't exactly know how this came about, but I guess fanatical cult mother over here is like, I want, and apparently this god is supposed to be like the ender of worlds.
I am like Pennywise? Does
like
he eat
Pennywise.
children?
It is in Maine.
So
it is Pennywise.
So when you were saying jump scares, it literally just brought back one thing, and that was when you were playing Resident Evil 4 for the first time.
Oh.
And you walked into that shack, and you did
It
the whole
jump. It wasn't even a jump scare, Jeremy. It was just
but it wasn't. But you did that quick spin around, and it acted like a jump scare. It was the milk lady thing that got her pitchfork shoved in her face.
I don't tell this to a lot of people, but I'm gonna apparently announce it to our followers. I think we have like 96 on Facebook. Come on, we need 4 more. Give us that 100. But for all out there who are listening, I am a big wimp when it comes to scary movies. Or not scary movies, scary games. I think it's more of the fact that you're more involved instead of just sitting back and watching it happen. Silent Hill 2 was like the first scary game that I got, and it freaked me out 10 minutes in. I overhyped myself because I was talking with the guy who I bought it at one of the game stores, and the guy's like, "Oh yeah, this is like the scariest of all the games." I think by that point they only had like 4 out. I think he's like, "Yeah, this is like super scary. This is considered one of the top 10 scariest games of all time." I was like, "Yeah." I took that bad boy home, so hyped to be scared that I got scared by sound effects. That was it. It was just sound effects. I'm I'm actually recovering right now. I'm playing Dead Space right now, and I'm actually moving pretty quick through that.
Good.
It did kind of scare me in the beginning a little bit. I'm like, oh god, what is these? And then it got me kind of angry by like chapter 3 that I didn't care. I was killing everything. I was yelling. I was like, "Come on out!" But yeah, Silent Hill is pretty scary game. But
So here's something to think about. The character of Dark Alessa is three different ages at the same time.
wait, just the Dark Alessa?
Well, the burned version of Alessa.
So Alessa is 3 different ages.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
She's 30, which is when her manifestation, her hatred first became a person, but it
Mm-hmm.
looks like it's 9. Alessa herself is 39, and her good self is 9.
Because she actually birthed that thing, right? Apparently.
The good self, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So Silent
She's
Hill
a witch.
Silent Hill confused me so much. So I'm looking back at the game. I'm going, okay, so they burn her. The mom Dahlia sacrifices Alessa, so that she can grow a god in her womb. So to stop that cycle from happening, she separates herself into a good half and a bad half. Jeremy is making funny faces you guys are never going to be able to see, which is really funny.
You'll see it when it goes to YouTube.
Okay, so, um, but she to stop this cycle, she splits off her a portion of herself, the goodness, I guess, into little baby Cheryl.
Mm-hmm.
Little baby Cheryl grows up a little bit, comes back to Silent Hill, gets brought back, and gets rejoined with Alessa, and the god is getting ready to be birthed. Now, at this point, depending on what actions you take in the game, determines this ending. Whether you have to fight the big boss, which is Incubus, a monstrous deity born from Alyssa. But if you do like, if you complete a certain side quest, you won't. I don't think you even have to fight this thing. It just kind of skips that whole fight. But there's actually 4 endings. I think there's a bad plus ending, a bad, a good, and a good plus ending. The bad plus ending, I think, is you just Harry's dead.
You killed Harry.
Like no, I'm saying it's like at one point in the game he references he's because he sees the couple in the monsters. Whatever he references, he goes, "Hey, what if what if what if I'm just dreaming? What if I'm still in the Jeep? Maybe this is all just a big dream." And if you get like the worst ending, he's dead in his Jeep. Like this is like his brain firing off the last like little synapses or electrodes or whatever you want to call it. And this is the last moments of his thinking before he just dies because the camera actually pans out and he's lying on a steering wheel and it's just horn as he's just lying there. I'm not entirely sure what the bad and the good endings are, but I know like the good plus ending is that everyone, Sybil walks away alive, Harry walks away alive, and Harry actually ends up with another baby. Like Cheryl is now baby again. She's like Alyssa has been rebirthed
Again.
completely into like a normal human form, which is actually Heather from Game 3, which we'll actually get to see Heather in the next movie.
So,
And
well, that's interesting to see. But before we get to the ratings, because we are getting to be at that time, what I was making faces at earlier is who auditioned for the role of Rose. First off was Meg Ryan,
yuck.
and the queen
Julia Roberts.
of Resident Evil, Mila Jovovich.
Mila. Mila, I really did like you in The Fifth Element. I really did like you in that. One word of advice, though. Stop ruining my movies. I don't like you in Resident Evil.
Or any
Well,
Resident
okay.
Evil after that. Well, the first one was okay.
The first one was okay. I give you that. Like I said, it's kind of a new thing. She didn't when she got later on and she got like the superpowers and stuff. It
I
just
create force fields.
it was so bad. And what irks me most about that series of movies, like I said, the first one was all right. What I really hate about those movies is that the fact that like in the second movie they introduced Jill, and you're like, oh, it's Jill Valentine from the games. This is gonna be amazing, and they sideline her.
They did the same thing with Leon in like the fifth movie.
And Chris,
Yeah, like Leon,
Claire,
I
I think
remember it
Claire,
was the fifth movie. Like the ending to the movie is like Leon on the top of a building. And then at the beginning of the next one and through the whole next one, there's no reference to what happened ever again.
I think he was killed. I think everyone during that like little battle scene, because I think they built those characters up, and then they had like the scene at the end where they were getting about to get attacked by like that whole army of monsters, and then like the next movie never references any of that. I'm pretty sure they all died. So congratulations, you wasted a bunch of characters. And what's even funnier is that I was actually talking to Ravenfire about those movies because she absolutely loves those Resident Evil movies, which, good for her. She likes the movies. Everyone has, don't make those faces. Don't make those faces, Jeremy. Everyone has their opinions on movies. You
Your
like the
opinions are
Ring.
wrong.
You like the Ring, Jeremy. It's not, you like the Ring, okay?
You mean
Everyone,
the room?
Oh yeah, the Room. I like the Ring. You like the Room. There's a lot of there's opinions out there, but she loves the Resident Evil movies. She just finds them fun to watch. And one of her favorite actors plays Chris. I think that was Wentworth Miller, who was in like Prison Break
Mm-hmm.
and The Flash. And her favorite character is, of course, Leon. I don't know why everyone likes Leon. He's some
Leon's awesome, duh.
whatever. But I even referenced that. I was like, yeah, Leon was in that movie. And this is how bad the movie was written, is that she didn't even remember him being in the movie. I like showed her a picture of him. I was like, no, he's in the movie. Here he is. He's right here. Look at this. Look, he's in the movie. And she goes,
And for all of you not watching at home,
yeah,
Jason held his phone up.
but there was no picture on the phone, so you're not seeing anything anyway. But I was like, he's right there. That's what he looked like. And she goes, yeah, I don't remember him at all. I'm like, yeah, this is the biggest problem that I have with those movies. They write these characters in the movies, and then they just become stepping stones for Alice's greatness.
And I don't want to touch too base on, but they did do a little bit better with Welcome to Raccoon City. There was its flaws, and we'll get to them when we get to it. But they did do better with that one, in my opinion. Leon was still a pansy, but
yeah, they kind of turned
him
haircut, boy. They should just called him Carlos and been done with it.
But Well, let's
All
look
right.
at these ratings really quick. So
Rotten
Jason,
Tomatoes, Rotten Tomatoes.
you sound like Alan Alda in an episode of MASH. Uh, IMDb.
Rotten Tomatoes.
IMDb first. IMDb.
Dusty Tomato. That's a corner gas callback for anyone out there who watches.
You said
Campfire.
Dusty Tomatoes, and all I could think of was Desperado. So I'm like, Rotten Tomatoes.
Dusty Tomato.
Why's your ranking so low?
Dusty Tomato.
Okay.
Oh god. People are gonna like stop listening to this about halfway through this. They're like, I can't watch it on the.
Okay.
Oh god, this is a
So,
nightmare.
scale of 1 to 10, Jason. What do you give
Ah, this
Silent
movie got a
Hill?
4.
4?
Oh my god, I oh, you're talking about what I would give it, or
Yeah.
what?
What do you give it?
Oh, I give it a 6.
I give it a 5.
You know what? I'm gonna go with a 7. I'm gonna bump it up one because, yes, I don't really like the ending. I think they cheaped out on most of the really good story because the story is much more complex than just it's a witch and she might or might not have powers. Because there's a whole birthing of a god, and that would have been really cool to think about, you know. But I do bump it up a little bit because I remember sitting in the movie theater. I remember sitting in the movie theater and a trailer for this movie came on. And when it started, remember you see those memes with Leonardo DiCaprio sitting on like the couch or the chair or whatever, and he's got that drink, he's pointing at the TV. Yeah, that thing.
This one.
I did that in the theater. Because I knew, because all they had to do was show that one alleyway, and I went, oh, I know what this is. This movie felt like Silent Hill. The feeling, the look of it, everything was Silent Hill to the T. It's just a shame that they just kind of changed the ending.
I give it a 5
really
because of that. That's a very good point. I agree with you. So I give it a 5.5.
She's like, I'll give it a whole point because it feels like Silent Hill. Jimmy's like, half a point.
IMDb, based on 234,000 votes, 6.5 out of 10.
6.5 out of 10. That's much higher because when you asked me a 1 out of 10, I went 4 because I thought that's what the critics had given it. It gave it a 6.
6.5 out of 10.
6.5 out of 10. It. Okay.
Now it's
I'm
time.
gonna agree with it. I'm gonna agree with that because critic-wise, they're not comparing it to a game. They're
True.
watching the movie and they're evaluating it as a movie. If this
That's not critics.
that wasn't critics?
That was IMDb's just people voting.
Oh, never mind. I thought we were doing Rotten Tomatoes. I'm way ahead of myself.
But that's still really high for just random people, especially gaming nerds.
Well, a lot of people consider this movie to be one of the better video game adaptations out there.
Now,
I need to go back and rewatch Assassin's Creed and compare it to the games.
Now, for the tomato meter.
Tomato meter, critic wise, 4.
You know it's a percentage, right, of 100?
40. Try 8. 8.
31.
31.
31. It was a splat through and through.
Jeremy, I can guarantee you that a lot of these kind of horror movies or splat movies for critics. I think critics generally just hate horror movies to a certain aspect.
They just said, like, one person said the storytelling is just as dim as we've come to expect from the material from video game movies. It looks better, but the one thing I can say about visually that I did not like about this movie, and I didn't bring it up earlier, I was not a fan of the CGI barbed wire at the end.
Yeah,
it just looked too fake for me.
And that was a problem with what a lot of fans were talking about this movie was it was too gory.
It wasn't that it was too gory. I didn't care about that. It was
No,
just the
but
barbed wire.
the game itself isn't that gory. I mean,
Oh
there's
yeah.
bodies and gore on the ground, but there's not any sort of actual like physical goriness. You know, you're not getting skinned alive or shredded by barbed wire or anything like that. It's very, you know, like I said, the game is very cerebral in what it does, and this movie is a lot more physical.
Well, the audience gives it 63%.
Still above average, I guess. They're kind of in the average range. Um, a lot of I think a lot of the complaints. Oh, Jim's got a funny face.
I just
Jeremy, read that. Read it. Read it. Read it, Jeremy. You were reading a comment, and that's why you made that funny face. So go ahead and go with the class.
Just it nailed with some extent the visual representation of some things of the famous video game saga, but it was destroyed by awful dialogues and bad pacing. And not very good at all. I mean, half the time I didn't really know what was going on. They didn't seem to properly explain anything, and I didn't understand half of the character actions. Plus, the CGI was pretty bad at times. I was confused and bored most of the time.
I don't think the CGI was that bad. I mean, when did this movie come out?
2006. It had its
2006?
moments. So, like, the CGI where they're changing from fogginess to the rusted set, that was great. It was very. It was just mostly the ending is where I had the problems with CGI.
I think I think the pacing is part of the problem because I know for a certain extent they were trying to show that like the world of Silent Hill was separate from the real world because of the Sean Bean and the Rose De Silva um, story arcs going on. And I think that's where the pacing broke because you're getting into this kind of excited chase thing on the Rose side. Then it just cuts to Sean Bean's character
Yeah.
doing something, and it's like, why would you? Why stop? And it's never happened in a Silent Hill game, as far as I'm aware. There's never been like a overworld. It's not like Silent Hill is separate from the real world. Quite frankly, I could be wrong. It's like I said, I literally just kind of did this research right after the movie, trying to piece this thing together, make sure all my facts were right, and I'm hoping I'm getting something right.
So apparently, the Sean Bean thing was a last minute addition. The studio was where there were only female characters in the movie.
Ooh, well, I didn't think about that. Cheryl,
Sharon, Rose.
Sybil, Dahlia, Christabella.
The only male guys you got the creepy Fester looking dude who looks
Yeah,
like Uncle like from the Addams Family.
Actually, I think that tall guy, that tall kind of, I don't want to be mean or anything, but he kind of reminded me of Frankenstein a little bit. The big tall guy.
Yeah.
I think he was the one who also doubled up as a Pyramid Head. But I know, at least for a fact, that they kind of changed things up in the next movie because that movie actually involves more Sean Bean, and he actually changes the character's name to Harry Mason. He uses it, I guess, as an alias or something to track down his missing wife. So it's kind of a continuation of that.
Mm-hmm.
But I just think for this movie by itself, it's just entirely pointless to have all that extra material. That could have been something they could have explained on the Rose side of the fence. Actually, technically, they did. They explained it on both sides.
Yeah. And I mean, the second one did come out like 6 years after this one.
Yeah, and ironically, I've seen this one quite a few times. And Revelations, I think I saw one time in theaters, and I don't remember jack about it. So when we actually watch it on Monday,
Oh my god.
Oh,
real quick before we leave, just so you know, I just looked at the cast for the next one. And first off, Malcolm McDowell is in it.
Who's he play? Oh, does he play? Hold on. Like some guy called Wolf.
No, his name is Leonard.
Leonard Wolf. Yeah,
Oh,
Wolf was his last name. If they just say Leonard, then they.
but it's also got a guy named Kit Harrington in it. I know you don't know the name, but I do because him and Sean Bean are in something else together.
Jeremy Kit Harrington was in what, Game of Thrones?
He plays Jon Snow.
Who did he play in this one?
Vincent. Jon Snow.
This game is this movie's weird. Hold on.
Well, we will get to that next week, though.
I just want to see who this Vincent character is. If he's the same guy in Silent Hill 3, because there. Problem is they start changing character. Okay, Vincent is in Silent Hill 3. Okay, I get it. Leonard Wolf. Yeah, he's in Silent Hill 3. Okay, so this is kind of an adaptation of Silent Hill 3. Okay.
Well, everybody, we will see y'all next week as we return back to Silent Hill for Silent Hill Revelation. Yes, I will have it all fixed, so we will be doing the live stream next time. But don't forget Movie Night Monday where we watch Silent Hill Revelation. It's going to be fun. I'm curious to see how everything turns out. So we will see y'all next Wednesday. We will be doing it on Wednesday. Same time, same campfire. And we hope to see all y'all there. Everyone stay safe.
Later.